Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. Duane the Great Writer and Seer.
Over the years, I have been chronicling the various potential situations that may befall humanity as a species. Every individual is the architect of their own simulated experiences in creation, for indeed each individual is the decider, as each unit of real awareness will be operating through creational mechanics, which are effectively their exclusive property. Just as we have our own computers, the real awareness being the operator symbolically, and that which manifests on the screen are the creational experiences that serve as the comparisons by which the isness that the real awareness is a part of can be recognized. The computer operator, the real awareness, is this a true reality everything, but creation, that which is manifesting on the screens, will be the parts, pieces, made possible to be isolated from the everything isness through the creational mechanics, that as the position alternates, that of creation, the ideas of it, the segregated pieces, to the real awareness, everything is position, so eventually recognition of this everything reality can be determined. This comparison is only made possible with the inception of the secondary personal self, for up until that point, although afforded the creational aside from the everything reality view, the real awareness everything position is maintained, and necessary is it for a position of immersion into the ideas, the segregated pieces of creation, as opposed to standing in real awareness indifference to them. As free will is made available, this is the ability of the real awareness to generate ideas via the body-vehicle mechanics, the thoughts, emotions, etc., and where this is so, as the body vehicles are free will activated, so a secondary position comes to the fore. We are immersed momentarily in the unreality of the personal self. But as we cease our idea-generating body vehicle activation, we return to the nowness everything of the real awareness position, and comparison between the two, the personal self, the ideas, and the isness can be determined. Generally, the overindulgence of the personal self, the free will generating of ideas, will render the individual isolated from the real awareness true position, and somewhat floundering through a creation, lost in the illusions of its own creations, until such time as the real awareness decides to recognize the is. This real purpose is made known to the personal self, and with re-established connection with the real awareness that we actually are, so can be utilized all experience, all lifetimes we have accumulated as the comparative references to recognize the is by. For the longest time we had become as the game characters on the screen, our creations taking on a life of their own as we embrace the consciousness and effected body forms as though considering our creations were real, forgetting we are actually this real awareness everything, that is, the computer game operator. Throughout our lifetimes, every experience we have is effected from ideas we have a free will installed into a consciousness then effecting body forms by which these ideas can be rendered into a simulation, just like the files we install on our computers that become as graphics on the screen. The ideas a consciousness installed can be those we have created ourselves through the body vehicles, or those as created by others we have agreed to. Very often, ideas that have surface appeal may have unseen additional ideas attached to them, as ideas tend to combine and interlock with others, that as we agree with one idea, we may be agreeing with all manner of ideas in association. As the religions, for example, are affiliated with ideas of sacrifice, death, and abuse, so these ideas we also will be a consciousness installing as we agree to the idea of a religion that is packaged as beneficially appealing on the one-dimensional front. And as all ideas are created, that which creates them will be a particular consciousness, a consciousness also comprising of the ideas it will. The consciousness and that which is generated from it are indivisible, that as we agree with an idea as created by another, we install also the ideas that are their consciousness construct, and included within the consciousness will be a general inclination, drive, or intent, that as we agree with a religious idea, we take on all the ideas in association, and as religions were created by dark force reptilians that have a consciousness design of overall domination and subjugation inclination, we rather take on these ideas in addition, that we have effectively agreed as to the dark force reptilian intended consciousness, as though downloading a computer game where we experience then being subjugated, controlled, and dominated by other characters. In reality, the only way another individual can have any bearing on our body form is if we agree that this can be so, and for the dominator then, the game is to find means and mechanisms by which his desires in relation to others can be accepted, installed as ideas in the consciousness of others, and this becomes then the shared experiential reality. The best means by which this is achieved is, as I said, the presenting of ideas that have surface appeal, but that have other ideas in association, ideas that are not seen, but regardless will become as the individual's experience, should the presented marketed idea be agreed with. The same principles apply to entire species as with individuals, that should a dominating species seek to subdue another, these ideas must be installed into the collective consciousness that is the target species. And this would be the situation for humanity, enslaved from its engineered inception, these idea agreements to slavery maintained through humanity's history, and the base template foundation then for the human experience is that of control at the hands of the dark force reptilians. But should the dark forces desire to escalate the control of the human species, such would require ideas in addition to the base template that is the human subjugation experience. And as the controllers wish to exact depopulation, robotization, or in the most extreme, complete genocide of humanity, so they must install these ideas into humanity's collective consciousness through whatever means they can. Ideally, they would desire conscious agreement, but as this is an unrealistic expectation, so they implant their ideas subconsciously, subliminally, and through their surface marketed, appealing fronts. Every idea agreement in a consciousness will be in effect now in isness reality terms, but through the design of a consciousness, which includes the ideas of a time and space as it effects into the physical level, so an idea cause only becomes its effect after a certain sequence of time frames have elapsed. The movie is complete on the disc, but the body forms that present the simulation of the physical level must process the movie from start to finish, just as our DVD players will. And it is the idea agreement or movie currently being watched, the idea most prominently embraced in a consciousness, that is being processed through to its physical level culmination. But should another agreement become the forefront, so the movie is switched for another that now begins its gradual rollout to a conclusion. The dark forces then, in their desperation, will be crowbarring as many agreements of a depopulation, genocide persuasion into human consciousness, in the hopes that one of them will be retained as the forerunner long enough to become a physical level actualized. As not only do they want to retain control of humanity, but seek to derail the efforts of Duane and the new friends from attempting to save the Earth, in reality to give humanity the means of saving themselves, the new you sound that connects them to the true reality of their real awareness, true being states, and their escalating efforts in regards to the advancing of their agendas, and especially in regards to the more extreme measures, is directly related to the presence of Duane, and that the Earth is the focal point of the new presentation. And so I am shown some of the various potentialities, the agreements present in human consciousness, that, as I said, will only come to pass on the physical if they are retained as the prominent agreement. But overall, the sheer volume of these installed apocalyptic style ideas testifies to the desperation of the controllers, as they are gradually losing their hold of humanity, of agreement as extended to them, and more so the swing is toward overall human experience that will be more conducive to awareness, the impending arrival to Earth of the stepping up alien armada being as one major example. In this potentiality, then, as another idea installed in humanity's consciousness, courtesy of the dark forces, I would find myself in the aftermath of a global apocalyptic event. What precisely had been the cause wasn't revealed, but I would in fact be experiencing what now was transpiring through the eyes of one of the human survivors. For the real awareness is a part of the isness everything reality that permeates through all consciousness affected form and feature, and although from the personal self perspective there appears to be differentiation and separation of a body form, in actuality every created form is animated from the same isness everything source, and so we can be interjected as a simulated form into any idea in a consciousness where we can experience the situations. We can observe from the real awareness aside from the simulation position, or we can view through the consciousness affected body forms of one of the situation's participants, as was the case here. The particular participant would be a female, and she would be among a group of human survivors that, although much of the cities of the world remained intact, humanity were drastically depopulated, suggesting an event which had wiped out a great proportion of humans, but had little bearing on the infrastructure. Interestingly, among the remaining humans of the Earth would be a scattering of another body type and species, one certainly not indigenous to the planet, humanoid in overall design, but far larger a form, skin of a scaled yellow complexion, and with features that reminded me a little of how orcs are depicted, large broad facial structures, tusk-like teeth protruding from the corners of their mouths, and powerful builds. For indeed they dwarfed the humans, and although nothing was revealed as to how they came to be sharing the earth with what remained of humanity, they were not in any way ill-intended or dark force affiliated, and indeed were surviving with the last vestiges of humanity, as though whatever circumstance had brought them here in this potential humanity experience had them now sharing humanity's fate. For indeed, as I viewed through the eyes of the female survivor, the group she was with had secured themselves underground, and among them would be one of these very orc-like, for want of a better reference, beings. The orc beings had a particular consciousness where their species not only were very benign, but also had certain capabilities, including heightened extrasensory perception and telepathy. They had the ability to calm the humans that they associated and hunkered down with through physical contact, and periodically, as I continued to experience this situation through the vehicle of the female, would she and her group sit in a circle and join hands. The orc being with them, also within the circle, would be able to generate a calming influence to all members that were connected to him through the joining of hands. The human species had been decimated population-wise, as I said, coexisting in survival with these curious orc beings. Additionally, would the survivors, human and orcs alike, be in constant peril? For from the ashes of the devastation had arisen 4 distinct groups. The human survivors and orcs, with their only compulsion being to perpetuate their existences, another large group of humans who had established themselves as a kind of militia whose only inclination seemingly was to wipe out the human survivors not part of their group, a third group of militia which instead of wiping out any survivors instead would enslave them and use them for whatever purposes they saw fit, and the fourth group appeared to comprise of mechanical robotic forms who also had the compulsion to destroy any form not their own, in other words, any that were biological. And all these groups then, the 2 militia human groups and the robots, were additionally locked into a constant conflict with each other also, generally operating on the surface, whereas the humans and orcs, who simply were attempting to survive and harboured no malignity toward others, tended to secure themselves underground. Train stations and structures of this nature, etc., as the best established means of evading the 3 more destructively inclined groups. One would have assumed the robot race to be the most efficient where the destruction of the human groups were concerned, but they seemed as though in a state of mental confusion, that yes, they would kill a human given the opportunity, but unlike the human militia groups, they had no structure, no coordination as a species or individually, as though cognitively impaired to a degree. One of the dark force agendas is to robotize humanity and then control them via technology. That humans then have their idea-generating body vehicle mechanics usurped, taken over, that the dark forces now can directly affect the human experience as they desire it to be through the human robot vehicles that they have wrested control of, through the technology that is connected to the now robotized humans. There are many possibilities as to how this robotization may play out, if indeed it does, if indeed this particular agreement can become as the forerunning idea agreement in human consciousness and be retained long enough to become physical level actualized, and all the variables then in regards to this robotization idea are of course dependent on additional agreements in relation to it. For I have been shown that should the robotization scenario come to pass, there is a phase whereas humanity are robotized through the activation of the nanobots present in every body form, that the human robots are relatively dormant momentarily until the technology that is to control their every thought and action is brought online. Sometimes a variation is that the dormant stage is so prior to the body forms becoming robotized also, and other variations have this stage where the control of these idea-generating vehicle mechanics are being transferred from humanity to the controllers through the technology, rendering the humans yet to be robotized, or the fully mechanized humans, not dormant, but running amok, as though in a state of confusion and oftentimes operating destructively. This is the general representation of the zombie movies we are shown. This confusion, disorientated and destructive phase prior to being fully controlled, and just as the zombies express this as the desire to destroy the uninfected, so impressions suggested the robot race in this experience and potential future view were indeed a certain proportion of humanity who had been robotized. That humanity had been depopulated, the robotization agenda had been exacted, a proportion of humans had been unaffected for whatever reason, becoming as the survivors, or forming into the two militia groups, and those that had been robotized hadn't seemingly entered the final phase of being controlled through the technology, but rather than being dormant as though awaiting instructions, as they would be with no current ability to utilize their own body vehicle idea generating mechanics, like a computer on a standby. Instead, in this instance, was the variation where prior to being controlled through the technology, they were in states of confusion. They wouldn't be actively seeking to destroy humans, as I said, that just like the movie Zombies, they only would do so should a human cross their path. That either this final stage, that of control through a technology of the robot humans, was yet to be initiated, or something had gone awry in regards to the completion of this agenda. For indeed I had no impressions of the impending execution of this final phase, or even of the presence of any expression of dark force controllers stationed on or anywhere near the earth. This was then the situation, humans segregated as they were, either enslaving or destroying each other, and all generally avoiding the zombie-like robotized humans. For indeed, at one point the female I was viewing all this through would be captured by members of one of the human militia groups, the group that were inclined to enslave as opposed to outright kill all those not of their own. She would attempt to escape them, but where she was on foot, they would be on horseback, and inevitably she was caught. She would attempt to bargain with them to surrender what she had scavenged food-wise for her freedom, for this was how she had indeed been captured, exposure from the underground base she resided in with her group, as she foraged for whatever supplies she could find on the surface. The militia humans would simply take her and her supplies to an area in whatever country this was taking place, which served as their base of operations, and her fate would be in their hands in regards to whatever purpose she would be forced to operate as. There would be another human male also captured by the militia slavers, and through his particular consciousness design, so affected was a body type and associated capability which was deemed of no value to the militia, and in such instances the militia would kill the individual rather than enslave one that they considered would be of little use. However, not only can we, the real awareness, view through any consciousness-affected body form, being part of this one-isness reality that animates through it all, but where agreements allow, we can make alterations to the consciousness of any individual also. And as I seemingly had agreements made available as afforded by this human male, so I would exact a swift consciousness restructuring that although the body form was the same, its capabilities were drastically enhanced. He was still enslaved, but now would be considered a valuable commodity, literally a transformation before the eyes of the militia, who had just previously determined him to be of no worth. As bewildering as this was to the militia, they would accept this, and the man would be allowed to live. My impressions were that he would actually improve his position, that eventually, through the abilities he now had, as effected through my consciousness overhaul I had exacted, he would be elevated from a slave position to being accepted as one of the militia. But he was of a more benign countenance, and through the position he would ultimately assume, that of being fairly highly ranked within the militia, so would he be able to bring his influence to bear in regards to their chosen capacity of operation. That even in this dire human situation, should it come to pass, certain key individuals can make quite the difference in overall species affairs such as these, or as in this case, a little consciousness tinkering can enhance individuals that are already of an inclination to operate in supporting capacities as opposed to destructive. These individuals always will be identified by the real awareness, and where agreement allows, so will we intercede into their affairs if it makes sense to do so. That perhaps this particular man may even then attempt to engage with the other more bloodthirsty militia group and the human underground-based survivors, and at least bring what remains of humanity, those not as disorientated robots, into a cohesive union as an aid to survival, and who knows where it might go from there. Evidently there was a reason for my assisting this man, that he not be destroyed, and be in fact elevated into a position within the militia who had captured him, where he can have a great bearing on their direction and choice of action. The female, however, the one I had initially been viewing all this through, was resigned to her position as a slave. In reality, effects she had decided for herself, through the agreements her consciousness harboured, as it was with all the participants of this overall situation, in regards to their circumstances and in relation to each other. For indeed, the underground group the human female had been surviving with would be discovered by the cutthroat militia group, the group inclined to kill on sight as opposed to enslaving, and her entire group would be eliminated. Overall, as I said, just another agreement idea that the dark forces have managed to install in human consciousness, and what becomes as the human experience depends on which of the agreements is held in prominence long enough that it becomes physical level manifested, be they these various apocalyptic style scenarios and depopulation events, or the more beneficial life and awareness occurrences, such as the alien armada and so forth.
What a movie, Kevin. And yes, I'm sure you scared many people there as they listen to this. It's very, very interesting. And it would seem to be that the star of the movie, kind of like in The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the North, who has decided to do funny things to little Dorothy and, her friends, etc., is in trouble again. And we know who that is, don't we? So, and according to Jeremy's experience and others. So you kids are the great witnesses. We support you, you support us. In other words, this is how it works. I'm a witness to Rebazar, Rebazar is a witness to me, and we do the same thing with each other here. We're witnesses to each other. Very, very important, and it's verified with the real side experiences. So We're not here to get people to believe this or accept it or any of this nonsense. No, that's not it. We don't have a teaching or a doctrine or all the silly stuff. Yeah, things are what they are because each person has the right to decide with their free will. So it's not about good, bad, or indifference, or that we have opinions or what have you. And so each person can decide as they hear this and have their own experiences to understand and see what's going on. And these are very good objective views. And overall, because we're in the personal self here, of what not to do. Okay, so all those years that I went through Eckankar and even Paul's and Darwin's and Harold's, all this stuff that I was to stay there and see that, it was a good lesson of what not to do, etc. So we need that also. And this is what is not understood. So there's always a much bigger picture that's going on here. So the idea in present day is the intuition seeing sessions that we're presenting, so people can learn to see for themselves, not just take our word for it or whatever, but learn to see for themselves and allow them to do that, because again, free will is very important. And what's so cool is that when you're completely aware with your awareness, your real awareness, because all life is awareness, you don't need free will because you're taken care of. It's so cool. So getting to that point, but in the meantime, you have your free will, and quite frankly, free will's a bitch, because your personal self is thinking, oh, I have free will, I can do whatever I want to be free, I want this, that, whatever. Again, you see in the movies, does it ever work out? No. And most of the time it just turns into a control factor, and it always implodes upon itself. So this is the fun part in the challenge, much more so than a cute little spiritual path that we've been through, etc. You have to be the real risk taker, and you really have to decide, you really want to see it? You really want to do this? Well, the best part will always show up, but it's going to take a while. And I'm teaching, not teaching, but in the presence of another SKYPE, etc., and letting these people know that, hey, give it 50 years. Not kidding. Paul gave it 25. That's nothing. You know, a lot of the so-called Ekis and higher initiates, they've been there a lot longer than 25 years, and they still don't get it. They're still dumb because they want to be babysat. And so 50 years, and so that should be your goal. And if you do it before then, well, good for you, but, you know, give yourself time because it's going to pass fast unless you have something else to do. So just like Jeremy's experience, we know who's in Kevin's experience, don't we? It's very, very real. So we don't have to be emotionally attached to what others decide and want to use their free will as. That's their business. And so it's all okay. Yeah, great, Kevin. Thank you very much for being the great witness, you and Jeremy and others. Thank you.